This is the first chapter of Product 37. It starts off with Neil Young, a nod to Neil Young. Seems like lately things are changing. Seems like lately things are going south. A few drinks now and she hardly knows him. He just looks away and checks out. And when she says it's time to do something, maybe talk to his old friends who gave it up, he just pours himself another tall one and closes his eyes and says that's enough. And every morning comes the sun, and they both rise into the day, holding on to what they've done. She loves him so. She loves him so. She loves him so. She does what she has to. He loves her so. He loves her so. He loves her so. He does what he needs to. Ramada Inn, Neil Young. Product 37. Chapter 1. Good Morning Meth. Carl woke up on a Saturday morning in April. He yawned, stared at the ceiling grid and tile, and contemplated his day off. He was the janitor at the rocket propellant plant, a government-run manufacturing facility nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of West by God, Virginia. They made practically everything that goes boom, as well as a localized ecological mess. He made pretty good pay and the work wasn't too hard. If it weren't for the succubus ex-wife, 3 kids, and an unsympathetic judge in the child support hearing, he'd actually have some decent money. Instead, he lived in an 80s trailer in a holler by a creek. He was short, average build, with a bottom lip slightly puffed out all the time like he was taking a selfie. The reality was that he was slightly depressed. He got up in bed, yawning again while stretching his arms. Maybe Terrence has got some good go, he thought to himself as he draped his knees over the bed to get on his clothes. Today wasn't jumpsuit day at the work at the RPP, so he eyed the floor about for some lightly worn evening clothes from the week before. He lifted up an old green pair of Dickies breeches and a gray Carhartt top with a frayed left wrist to put on for a Saturday. Because he expected to use meth later, Carl made sure to eat a big bowl of cereal and down 2 cans of Mountain Dew and a pint of Walmart water before he headed out to his buddy Terrence's house. He got in his '97 Toyota Corolla and made his way out of the holler. It's always best to show up to Terrence's house unannounced, especially if Carl wanted to get high. He walked up the rickety gray ramp to Terrence's little shack, hoping to smell the sweet plastic smell of soldering meth. Getting his nose near the door when it was opened, he lightly rapped 7 times on the screen so as not to sound like the pose. It's Saturday. He has to have something. Maybe a Xanax too if no meth, so I can play video games and sleep the weekend away, Carl thought to himself. Hell, every day for Terrence was a meth fuel day. If Carl was lucky, he'd smell that Tina first thing when Terrence opened the door. Then Terrence would have no excuses, and Carl could get high right away and be happy again. If not, he'd have to wait until who knows when. Carl knew the game. Terrence could have an 8-ball of ice in his pocket, but he'd still make Carl drive somewhere to get it, putting Carl through some chore. Terrence finally came up to the door. "Hi, Carl," Terrence said as he scratched his hairy belly under a half-buttoned-up shirt. "What's up with you today?" "Came, of course, to see if you could help me out," said Carl in a semi-sarcastic tone. It was a pretty stupid thing to ask because Carl and Terrence hooking up on the weekends was getting to be irregular. "Ain't got nothing yet," said Terrence as he hocked a loogie on a U. "How much you got to spend?" $20, said Carl as he reached in his left rear pocket. "You know I can't do anything with a 20 unless I got some personal. I'm out, and I don't have any cash on me at all," Terrence shrugged. Carl knew most likely both weren't true. "The best thing my guys can do is half a G for 50. I got 5 on it." Carl hated to hear that, not only because he wasn't on his way to getting high, but he dreaded what he knew Terrence was going to say next. "We'll have to figure out a way to come up with the other $25. Carl knew then and there Terrence had some dope. He just wanted to go do a chore, need Carl's help for something, or wanted company for a while. Carl was mad that he was going to have to hang out with his buddy when he wasn't high. "Dumpster diving always seems to get me $20 to $40. You can help. Let's go," said Terrence with a grin. "It's a beautiful day," Terrence said while gesturing wildly with his hands. Carl knew Terrence was high, and he was right about all 3. Today it was chore, help, and company. There was nothing Carl could do but go for the ride. At least Carl knew he would eventually get some meth. Carl rolled his eyes and said, "Sure." Terrence left the front door open without inviting Carl in. Carl leaned in the doorway and watched Terrence grab a pack of Lucky Strike filters from a carton in his freezer. Door fully open, Carl sniffed the air deeply. The unmistakable scent of meth was there as it always was, but he couldn't determine how fresh. Terrence returned to the front door of his shack, pulling it behind him and locking it, doorknob as well as deadbolt. They made their way up to Terrence's rusty black Chevy S10, parked beside a makeshift shed with old metal roofing used as siding. They both got in. Carl sat in the passenger seat and smirked. It was a beautiful day. It would only be better and brighter if Carl's aging heart was beating at the careless clip of some crystal meth. The redwoods and dogwoods were blooming, and the mountains were getting thicker and greener. "Say," Terrence said with a shaped grin, "you want your dick sucked?" "Of course, Terrence," said Carl, "but I'd like to get high first. You understand." He looked sheepishly at Terrence. "Then we can do our thing." Terrence rolled his eyes and head, grimaced, and reached into his front pocket and brought out a little bubble bowl and a mini torch. "I knew you were holding," said Carl as he cupped the bowl and lighter in his hands. He held the bowl out in front of him, lit the torch a few inches shooting underneath, and heated the brackish white crystalline mess until it became clear. When a spot of smoke came out of the hole on the bubble tip, he put the glass to his mouth, sucked, and rolled. "You better leave me half of that," Terrence said, "and let me know when you're good and high." He slowed down, trembling a little, to look for a good spot to pull into, one which would cover the deeds in the trees. After several deep hits, Carl shuddered wide-eyed and started breathing heavy. Terrence found a logging trail at the bottom of a forested hill and pulled his S10 in to park. Carl hurriedly pulled down his pants. His dick rolled around in his lap as it chugged. Terrence pounced. Carl closed his eyes and thought of Glenda, the big girl that lived in the yellow trailer at the bottom of the first row. A minute or two later, and they were both back on the road, scanning out both sides of the truck windows for any bit of scrap they could find. After halfway filling up the truck with small items from ditches and dumpsters, they came to a wealthy subdivision overlooking Sutton's Creek. Terrence slowed the truck to a crawl and pointed at a hot water heater set out in the front of one of the houses at the bottom of the subdivision. Sutton's Crossing was another one of those boring, templated housing developments that were popping up here and there in the mountains. All the houses were the same. The front faces them were all brick, halfway lapping a lower layer of brick on each side, and the rest of the house was either hardy board or vinyl siding. Terrence grinned. The cookie-cutter ridiculousness of all the rows of suburban houses made him glad he was poor white trash. "That hot water heater puts us there," said Terrence. "That there will be enough for our gas and dope." It was 11. The scrapyard closed at noon on Saturdays. They had to load it pretty quick and get it to the yard and get paid. "It's outside by the trash can, so no one can say shit. I hope it still has some water in it for more weight." He looked at Carl and smiled. Terrence parked his S10 in the front of the hot water heater a ways, and they both got out. Terrence walked beside the water heater and grabbed the two copper pipes coming out the top, assuming the position. "I guess that means I'm on the bottom," Carl said, not making a sex joke, but implying that, even still, Terrence wanted him to be the bitch. Carl knelt down and cradled the bottom of the hot water heater with both hands. Looking up, Terrence remembered he needed to lower the tailgate, and did just so. Then they both grabbed the hot water heater again, and Terrence waited for Carl to lift the bottom so he could lower his end. Carl got the bottom of the heater waist high when it slipped. Terrence tried to wrestle the top end under control with his hands on the pipes, but it was too late. It rolled down the road bank towards the house, aimed at a Dodge parked in the drive. "Son of a biscuit eater!" exclaimed Terrence. Terrence and Carl looked at each other horrified as they watched the hot water heater pick up speed. Joggling wildly, the heater hit a landscaping rock and hopped a couple of feet in the air and slammed into a passenger side of a modern orange Dodge Challenger right above the right front wheel well. A dent smudged with blue paint from the top of the heater could be seen above the front right tire. "Fuck," thought Carl. The last thing Carl needed was to be at the scene of a crime. He thought of all the coming weeks after Human Resources got a whiff of it, and all the piss tests he'd had to do with the RPP. If things in Human Resources got too bad, he'd have to use his real piss, as well as have a male nurse watch him to make sure it came out of his own pecker. "Let's get out of here," Carl said in disgust. "Nah, just wait," said Terrence, and waved his hand down at Carl. Terrence was smart. They were already caught if anyone had seen them. Might as well wait around to see if anybody had noticed it. He paused for a bit, searching for shadows and light in the rooms. Finally, "Let's roll it back up the hill and get out of here. I didn't see shit. I want some go, and we need a scrap to get some." There wasn't Carl could do at this point, except go along and hope Terrence was right and no one saw, so he'd get his weekend masturbation bath. He shuffled once and made his way down the bank with Terrence to heft the heater back up the hill. As they rolled it back up to the truck, Carl looked at Terrence and asked, "You got insurance, don't you?" $3,000 in fine money Terrence paid the DMV and the license problems it caused him, and he was cured of that no insurance shit. The DMV knows how to teach unconstitutional lessons. Of course I do, Terrence said with a smile. But that there is in the orange Dodge Challenger, with a pinstripe and a hemi hole even in the hood. These here are some people that are uptight with money, and I don't want to have to hear their shit. It's 2023. Anyone that buys a Dodge Challenger these days is trying to be more economical with their midlife crisis. A guy with a crisis mobile like that cares too much about money in his now cliche car, and I don't want to have to hear any shit. They might even call the cops. It's best to see if we can get out of here and get away with it all, instead of having our Saturday scrap and drug run interrupted by a couple of suburban hotheads and maybe even cops. Terrence made too much sense sometimes for an uneducated Red. There's got to be cameras everywhere, said Carl, and a ring cam on every door. Fuck it. Plausible deniability, Terrence said as he looked over at Carl and winked at his clever usage of a couple of 50-cent words. I saw it go down the bank, but I didn't see it hit the car, and definitely didn't see any blue dents. He was grinning now, surprised at himself that they might actually get away with messing up the sad old man's ride. Small edit there. Sometimes these rich douchebags have to pay the dirtbag tax. As long as it's not noticed right away and they have enough money not to worry about going through the video footage, this might be something I can laugh about for a long time. He looked forward and drove to the scrapyard, chuckling often along the way. When they got to the yard, even Carl was laughing at Terrence unload the scrap. Small edit here. $38.70, that would be enough. Carl's penis swelled while thinking about Glenda later while he was at his trailer with his meth and making love with his left or fucking with his right. That's the end of the first chapter, and I'll probably read the second one maybe here in a minute, but thank you.